Hi, my name is Gerhard and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with Bob Junke. He is the founder and CEO of a company called Advantace. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
So your name, your company name is a combination between Advantage and ACE.
Correct.
So you're building high performance environments.
Correct.
How does that look like? Describe that for me.
Sure. Well, although the definition might be a little simple, getting there is a little bit more difficult, but the definition from our perspective is this. We try to help companies put the 7 conditions or building blocks in place to help them create a highly proactive sales culture. And the bottom line, once you do that then, is that you're able to create an environment where you can achieve high performance sales objectives along with significant growth. And you're also able to achieve the performance metrics that you're looking for.
So you call it an environment, and that is kind of the environment that sales managers dream about, but they have no idea on how to create it.
Well, that's been a big problem, and the reason we got into this is that many years ago, I really come out of the solution selling sales environment, and I happen to be doing a workshop over in Amsterdam, and as I invariably do, I ask managers after I've done a workshop, gee, how did the people do who went through the workshop last time I was here? In this case, it happened to be about 2 months ago, and I think this particular managing director that I asked this question to was still smarting from an unsuccessful year end, and he said, my people have reverted to Neanderthal selling. And I held back the chuckle because it is funny, but it is certainly very serious. And I started thinking from that moment on, well, if we're providing sales training and at the end of a course, people are very happy and there's a lot of flag waving, et cetera, what happens afterwards? And what happens is the people just, as this gentleman said, they revert. So we started thinking, well, how do we prevent that from occurring? And it really dawned on us, just like salespeople, a lot of them aren't born knowing how to sell, that sales executives too don't know how to manage a sales operation from the top down, and therefore maybe a process would help. So we really got to thinking about this, and if you think of a sales operation as a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid you have your salespeople, and they're the ones who we want to affect so that we can achieve objectives. The next layer up, you have your first-line sales managers, and they're key to impact salespeople. And then you have sales executives. So we took this holistic view of the entire sales operation and said, okay, so how can we impart process to help that entire operation achieve those objectives? And that's what resulted in the 7 conditions.
So describe the 7 conditions, if you will.
Okay. Let me start from the bottom and work our way up. So at the bottom, the first condition is to make sure that you have a highly effective sales process in place. And back in my solution selling days when I worked directly with Mike Bosworth, the founder, we found, and I think this is true today, that if you look at an average sales operation, about 15% of the sellers are these natural, intuitive, we call them sales eagles. Right. They're the ones that really don't need process, although they benefit too. But it's the other 85% who are the primary targets. And what does the sales process do for them? Well, we look at sales process and we believe that there are 10 key skills that you want your salespeople to master. And what a sales process should do is help them be able to master those skills. Right. But let's talk about the next set of conditions, because those are the ones that were designed to impact your first-line sales managers. So in our view, the first-line sales managers are the linchpins of the organization, because they're the ones who are supposed to take corporate directive and make sure that they impact salespeople in a way that they achieve those objectives. So they're the linchpins. The common link between the salesperson and the sales manager, though, is that effective process. So the idea is to help sales managers manage salespeople effectively to that process. And that results in the next set of conditions. So the second condition, again, this one for sales managers, is opportunity assessment. And what we found is that most sales managers, although they do it, they don't do it consistently, and they tend to short shrift it. We believe that a sales manager should follow a very consistent process to identify 6 things. And once those 6 things are analyzed, you can determine if there's gaps, work with the seller to get rid of the gaps, and if you can't, then the manager should exercise tough love and, in all likelihood, disqualify that opportunity. By the way, the 6 things. Did we, or did you as a salesperson, identify a critical business issue that will drive a sales cycle to a successful conclusion? Did you identify a solution, and did you build in our differentiators? Did you prove it? Did you call on someone, I'll use this term a bit later, did you call on someone above the power line, someone who's key to making the decision? Is there a plan in place, a sequence of events to help the buyer with their journey to buy? And is it value justified? And by the way, with value justification, who owns the numbers? We want the buyer to own the numbers, not the seller. So those are the things that a sales manager should do in opportunity assessment.
Is there a question, and where does it come in, about the value that your company is going to generate for your client? Is that,
Absolutely.
Is that the solution?
Well, the solution is the answer to the problem. The solution then should be compared against the problem, and then the value of that solution should be weighed against the problem. And if the return is there, then then it should be a go.
That is very clear. But you also, when you go through the 6-step process, you also disqualify opportunities that don't.
Correct.
That are not good for your business.
That's right. Disqualify and disqualify early. Don't wait until the end after you put resources, et cetera.
What's number 3?
So, excuse me, the number 3 is pipeline balance and management. And we take a very particular way of looking at pipeline management. So the end game, if you will, is that we want salespeople to make their numeric objectives on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. But when you think about it, the best way to do that is to make sure that when a period ends, right, and that's done, either made your objectives or didn't, we want to make sure that you go into the next period with a fully loaded pipeline. And we have a pipeline balance algorithm to help managers do that. So that's the third one. The fourth is predictive metrics. And what is a predictive metric? There's a lot of talk about those today, and in my view, a predictive metric is one that enables a sales manager to identify deficiencies that a salesperson might have today that will impact their ability to make objectives tomorrow. But the key is that those performance metrics, that type of metric, should be such that you can link it to a particular skill deficiency and then have enough time, because it is predictive, to not just uncover the problem, but then put the right corrective actions in place to get that person back on track to make their objectives. I'll give you a quick example. This is my favorite of the predictive metrics. We call it the A to B ratio. And in simple terms, an A opportunity is where salespeople are calling above the power line to the buyers they should be calling on. And a B opportunity is when they're calling on buyers who are below the power line, who they really shouldn't be spending a lot of time with. And we found that if you're looking at an average salesperson, average sales organization, that a starting A to B ratio is 1 to 8. In other words, for every opportunity above the power line, salespeople are working on as many as 8 below the power line. We've done a lot of research on that with our clients over the years, and we found that a salesperson in a 1 to 8 ratio, here's a mind-blowing stat, if you're in a 1 to 8 ratio, you are literally wasting 2 days per week, 40% of your time, calling on buyers who cannot buy. So that becomes a very important predictive metric. And the objective of a sales manager should be to get that salesperson to a best in class of about 6 to 1. Make sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So if a sales manager is doing a great job with the 3 things we talked about so far that a manager should be doing: opportunity assessment, pipeline balance and management, and analysis and management to predictive metrics, they will get a crystal clear picture as to where a salesperson has a selling difficulty in one of those 10 skills, be it prospecting, need development, qualification, et cetera. And therefore, the next one is, in fact, skill development. And they should be able to put a surgical plan in place to help that salesperson overcome that selling difficulty. So those, in fact, are the 4 that the sales manager should focus on. So that's 5 altogether. Let's take it up to the sales executive level. The key objective of the sales executive should be to put in place that highly proactive sales culture. So what's a sales culture? Well, Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, he says that culture is having a shared or common way of doing things and doing it passionately. So let's take that definition and apply it to a sales culture. Sort of interestingly, when I look at the sales cultures I've seen, I've heard sales executives say, well, you know what, I only hire the best and I don't have to manage my people. And I say, okay, Pinocchio, but what does that result in? And what I find is that it results in what I like to call a Wild West sales culture. Everyone does their own thing. In a way, it's like anarchy. At the other end, you have sales executives who tend to manage with a bit of an iron fist, and it's almost like totalitarianism, if you will, versus anarchy. And in fact, they also tend to manage to the wrong things. How many calls did you make? Not what was the results of those calls, but how many calls you make, how many dials you make, all the traditional things that I think are wrong. In between, you have what I think should occur. Let's go back to that pyramid analogy that I gave you earlier. So coming up the pyramid, the sales executive has those predictive metrics, they have pipeline information, and they can also take a look at opportunities. Well, if that goes up the pyramid, what comes back down from the executive? This is the key. Remember, it's the common way of doing things passionately. So what the sales executive ought to do is not dissimilar to what sales managers do, but at a much higher level. They should assess opportunities. Not all of them, right? Only strategic ones or ones that are high value. And they should identify gaps and make sure that the manager understands what those gaps are. They should look at the pipeline and determine where gaps are and what has to get done to rectify the situation. They should do the same thing with predictive metrics. And if the sales executive is doing that, what will the first line managers do? They'll do it too. Who will they do it with? Salespeople. And if they do it with salespeople, that sends a pretty clear signal to your salespeople as to how they should sell effectively. And the beneficiaries of that will in fact be your salespeople, and that's how you create that proactive culture.
So a culture usually also, most of the time runs on the vision, the mission, and the value system that the company has created. So how does the sales culture roll up to the corporate culture?
Yeah. Well, in fact, in my view, the sales culture should be an adjunct too. There will be differences, I think, because it is sales. But in fact, if the corporate culture is one that is, for example, conducive to developing people, I can't think of a better way to develop your people. And by the way, when I look at some of the results our clients have achieved because they've done this in terms of achieving corporate objectives, we've had clients who have increased product sales by 647%. We've had clients who have improved predictive metrics by 1,900%, and clients who've increased, for example, average contract values by as much as 925%.
And those are all in the B2B space.
That's in the B2B space, yeah. So we have one more to look at, right? Number 7.
Right.
Number 7 is, in fact, technology enablement. I look at technology. It's interesting, the conversations I heard today and the things you were saying about AI, et cetera. To me, technology enablement should be the icing on the cake. The icing on the cake from the perspective that they should facilitate the first 6. They should make sure that you can do the first 6 and do them easily. Right. So technology, the CRM, for example, should enable salespeople to not just do data entry, because salespeople hate that. Technology should enable salespeople to want to do that part of it because it should help them win more deals. Right. It should, in fact, help them generate their sales cycle control letters to win more deals. And it should facilitate how the manager does the things that they should do that we've talked about, and the same with executives. And that's how, altogether, those 7 result in achieving the objectives that we've seen.
Would it be fair to say, Bob, that a high-performance culture is one where the management looks constantly, monitors the right mindset and the right skill set, and they have the right tool set to execute?
Absolutely. That's what pulls it all together. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Much.
Yeah, appreciate it.